What is up, guys? Thank you for tuning in to Connected by Creatures. Zach and I are stoked for this guest, and I know you guys are too. Rob Christian. What's up, Rob?
What's good? How's it going, guys?
What's going on, brother? So freaking good to see you, man. How you been?
I know. I'm excited for tonight. It's gonna be fun.
Yeah, most definitely. Uh, for those of you guys that don't know, this has been a crazy week for me. I got all shifted up and worked night shift half the week, and last night I put in a 17-hour shift, and I've been pushing through for tonight. Like that's been my whole goal. Is like I got to get to Friday because we're gonna have a good time on Friday. So, Rob, man, again, appreciate you coming in, hanging out with us tonight. Zach and I have talked about it, and like we're both extremely excited that you're here because not only is it that the things that you do with nerd that everybody's aware of, but the things outside of that is what Zach and I really want to dive into and get with you. So the first thing that I would just kind of want to start out with you is you started really young, like even doing education and stuff really
Yeah.
young. And
Yeah.
how did you kind of find that path to get into the education side so young?
Hmm. So when I was really little, my mom actually had tarantulas as pets. Like before I was even born, my mom had a couple tarantulas as pets. So when I was little, like I was super into them. When she would clean the cages, she would just like let them crawl all over me, and I was just like all about it. So whenever my like preschool or kindergarten would be like, "Hey, let's do something for show and tell," I was like, "I'll bring in my spiders. Let me bring in my spiders. It's weird. I guarantee you, no one else will bring in tarantulas." So I used to bring in my tarantulas for show and tell, and my teachers were like, "Oh, that's weird. That's unusual." But I used to like I was into them, so I would tell them all about, the
Yeah.
pedipalps and the legs and the abdomen and the cephalothorax and teach people about them, even when I was like really little. And from the time that I could read, like Reptiles magazine, I think started in 1994, right around then, and my mom signed me up for Reptiles magazine like the next year, and so I was subscribed to that when I was really little. So when because I was just always into reptiles, so anytime that I went outside, I was looking for spiders and salamanders and snakes and all that sort of stuff. So when Reptiles magazine came out, I was reading through Reptiles magazine as like a 5 year old and like just trying to understand everything that they were writing about, because back then it was mostly like actual information and not just like personality stuff.
Yeah.
So um I
Because
would
this is what, like the '90s, right?
yeah, I was born in 89.
Okay. Yeah.
So
Yeah. I was gonna say I thought we were pretty close in age.
yeah, so when that's like no internet, it was like you could get books out of the library, you could get
Yep.
magazines, and that's it. That's all the
Yeah.
information that you could get. Or you'd bump into somebody who's got snakes, and then you could ask them a bunch of questions. They'd be like, "I don't know any of that stuff," and you'd be like, "Okay, well, it was. I'm glad somebody else keeps a snake around here, I guess."
Right.
Pretty much. So when I was little, I would just like read every book that I could get my hands on, and so when I would have any opportunity to do like show and tell or science fairs or anything like that, I was like, I'm bringing in my pets. I want to bring something in. And I had tarantulas when I was young. And then I got into lizards because my dad's afraid of snakes. So I wasn't allowed to have snakes when I was a kid. And I wasn't allowed to get snakes until I started high school. So when I was like 12, 13 ish.
Yeah.
So I still have my first pet snake. But so
That's awesome.
backtracking to how I got into the education was I would bring in my pets, my tarantulas for show and tell, and I would teach people about them. And people were like, "Wow, you actually know a lot about these weird things that I've never heard about." And I was like, "Yeah, I really like them. You should like them too." And as I got more lizards and more pets, I would bring in like four animals at a time, and my teachers were like, "You should like do this. You should teach the other classrooms about this." And then I would do like my class and then maybe one other class. And then all the other teachers would be like, "We want to have Robert come in and teach our classrooms about stuff." And so my teachers in elementary school were like, "You guys should start a business. You should like actually, people get paid hundreds of dollars to just do what you're doing, where you bring in your animals and talk about them and teach people about them. And so when I was like, I think 12, 13, yeah, right around 13, maybe, when I first started getting snakes, my mom was like, I mean, they cost us a decent amount of money just to take care of them for heating and feeding and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah,
Maybe if we do educational programs and charge for them, we won't have to pay to feed them. We could just have them. All that money will go straight back into buying cages and paying for electricity and buying feeders and all sorts of stuff like that. And she looked into it. She took a couple business courses, and I was 13, so I was like, you tell me what I got to do and I'll do the thing. So we did it. So she set up a business. We created Radical Reptiles, and I did, probably a couple thousand programs over the 8 or 9 years that we did that business. We had a partnership with our local library system, so the Boston Public Library System, because I grew up on the South Shore of Massachusetts. So we partnered with the Boston Public Library System twice for 2 summers. And what we did is we did something called Wild Reads, where the library would encourage kids who came into the library, or parents. They would say, hey, look, we're going to have a program at this date at the library. So here's some cool books about reptiles and about other exotic animals. If you read one of these books and then, bring it back to us, show up on this date, and we'll let you be hands-on with some animals. And so we did that for 2 summers straight, where we did 3 programs a day, 4 days a week, and hit every library system in the southeastern part of Massachusetts. Well, like the eastern part of Massachusetts, basically.
That's huge, man.
Yeah,
I love that too, man. Like,
hundreds of kids, hundreds and hundreds of kids over doing that, and just getting to share that information and share the animals with the kids is always super, super important to me, and always exciting for me, because I remember being the kid in the crowd who was like the only kid who knew what was going on, and be like, oh, I'll answer that one. I'll answer that one.
I was that same kid, man. So like, I can remember, it was a program just like you're talking about that you were doing. And like, that's my goal. And, Wrapped Around Reptiles is to do what you were doing when you were 12, 13 years old. So, much respect and envy really to you, man. But I remember being that kid where it was like somebody, as a park ranger, the Corps engineers or something like that would come to the school, and it could be like a box turtle, and dude, I'm jumping up and down in the back of the classroom wanting to talk about the box turtle, like, hey, I know what that is, blah blah blah. And they were like, kids, sit down, we're trying to give this speech, not you.
we know a thing or two about what this box turtle's got going on. Let us teach about it. If we miss something, you let us know, okay?
exactly. And
that's awesome, man. That's tremendous.
I remember when I was in middle school, I had a guy stop by my middle school to do a reptile program, and they gathered like all the 7th grade into the gymnasium, and the guy's talking about, turtles, and he's got like red-eared sliders and stuff, and he starts asking questions. I'm like, yep, I'll answer that one. I'll answer the next one. I'll answer the next one. And he starts talking about nocturnal animals, and I'm like, yep, nocturnal, diurnal, blah, 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 this, that, and the other thing. So he's like, okay, well, I got to take out a big snake, and I might need an extra set of hands, and this kid knows what the heck he's doing. So come up here, come on up. And he had like a true red tail boa. Like, people talk about like 9-foot red tails. Like, oh, I saw a 9-foot red tail, and you look at it and it's 5 feet long.
Right.
Yeah. He had an 8.5-foot long Guyana red tail boa, and he was like, help me take this boa out of this container. So he picks up the front half, and I'm like a little, pound child, and I'm like trying to lift the back half. And he's like, the only person I can trust to help me out with this, because you know something about reptiles. If something goes wrong, you probably already have been bit by a snake before. And I was like, yes.
Dude, and how cool did you feel in that moment? Like, how, like, as an elementary school kid, like, you're being told directly by the guy putting on this big show in front of your whole class, this is the only guy that I can trust to do this right now. Like, you must have been fucking king turd shit mountain for the rest of the fucking year.
Like, pretty much. It was incredible. It was amazing. And then nowadays, that guy's name was Mike Rabalski. He runs Rainforest Reptiles out of Massachusetts. And I partnered with him to go fight legislation in Massachusetts, in Maine, and New Hampshire. He showed up for all those things, and I consider him a pretty close friend now. It's really crazy. He's always like, "Don't talk about those programs because you're making me feel old because I did those programs when you were a little kid, and then now you're doing it too."
Yeah. And man,
so
I want
good.
to talk about too. Like, I want to talk about how important those programs still are, because one thing, not to go off the rails, but like Brian Barczyk comes to mind with the fact that he just hit 3 million followers on YouTube, subscribers on YouTube. That's a tremendous platform, right?
Huge.
And a lot of what he talks about is the same thing. Like, I want to cut through and try to entertain people, and then somehow catch all these people that didn't know they were interested in reptiles and convince them that reptiles are cool. You know, and he, I think he's done well with that. But what he was saying in his podcast, he mentions a lot how they're starting to reach a point where there's so many guests coming to the Reptarium now that are like, "Oh, you have a YouTube channel?" They don't even know who he
They
is.
had no idea.
They don't know anything about his online persona. And yet here they are because of something that's done face-to-face in person. And so, you know what I mean? Like think about, I want everybody to think about how huge that is. Somebody that has 3 million subscribers on YouTube is still becoming more effective at spreading this hobby and this and all these animals, and the love for these animals is now even further effective by doing something in person. So like, the digital stuff, as much as a lot of us talk about, I mean, obviously this platform that we're using right now, it's important, but like, man, those face-to-face interactions, those in-person things are still a tremendous part of keeping this stuff alive. And again, just breeding it for the next generation of kids to come up, man. I mean, there's nothing more important than, like I was saying, that moment of you as that kid being brought up one-on-one, like, "Oh, you're the only kid that you could trust." And how envious were all the other kids in the audience, like, "Man, I wish I knew more about snakes, because then maybe I could be the guy the next time that he comes, and maybe I can help with the snake because now I know more about him." You see what I mean? Like, that's crazy. That, like, I literally have goosebumps just talking about it. That's so fucking cool.
And it really is, man, because like I said, I was the same kid, and Zach was the same kid. That's why we call this Connected by Creatures, because that's what brings us all together, are the love for these animals. And if you put any of us back in the classroom that we came from, we were the creepy kid, because we loved, we love these weird ass, and it's not even just that, it's now, man. Like, I go to work and grown ass men are like, "I'm not coming to your house. You got all them damn snakes." And it's like, let's think about this, man. Like, you come to my house for 15 minutes and my 12-year-old daughter is going to drag a snake in there, and you're really going to tell me that this animal's scaring you and going to hurt you?
It's too dangerous.
Right. And like, to me, that interaction with a little kid is everything to me. Like, I love it so much. Like, having a kid down the street or something, and they're in my front yard or walking down the street, and I can show them an animal and their eyes light up because they've never had the opportunity to touch that animal or to interact with that animal. And man, doing what you were doing, Rob, like, I really feel that that changes people in a way. Like, when you get that, a snake or a spider, either one, that has that stigma to it, that has that negative connotation to it, and you have this kid, 12, 13, however old you were at the time, showing you that this is just an animal. Like, this isn't some evil thing. There's, this negative, stigmatized bullshit to this animal. But look at this,
flies in the face of everything they've been taught.
And
it's like, wait, everything I've always been told was like, only good snake's a dead snake and blah, blah. And if that's your only ever information you've ever been given, because your parents don't know any better, they're genuinely ignorant. And that ignorance just continues. And literally, like you're saying, Bradley, it can take just that one moment at a presentation in a school or a library or Boy Scouts, Girl Scout, whatever. It can literally just be that one moment where this light bulb switches on in this kid's head that, like, hey, this is really neat. And then it can just it's amazing that the changes that you can have, on the world by just, again, impacting the minds of children. So no, that's amazing, man. I think that was my favorite part about your story, because there's some pictures or video of you on Facebook somewhere of you doing a presentation like way back in the day at like a summer camp or something. Like, you're like clean shaven, like no piercings,
looks like a
no
completely
tattoos.
different guy.
Yeah, like you look. This is
Those
were to myself. I can't talk.
Those were when I was in 6th or 7th grade.
Yeah.
I maybe 7th grade. I was doing programs at a campground near the house that I grew up in. The elementary school that I went to is like right on the edge of some woods. So at the end of the year, like right before summertime, they would have everyone hike out to this campground that has like all these cabins in the woods, and we'd hang out at the lake for an hour to have lunch and then hike back. And I didn't realize that there was a place like that so close to my home where I grew up, because when I was young, my mother, my sister, and I would go to like northern New Hampshire to go camping, and we used to spend like a month and a half out in the woods, like in a tent, just camping when I was growing up. So I didn't realize that there was just like a heavily wooded, like away from technology, away from people, campground that was so close to me. And when I found out about that, and there was like a lot of families that stayed there. So there was a lot of kids who would be around the campground, my age or younger or older, a little bit older. And so I was like, hey, if you guys, I love camping, if you guys can hook us up with, a night or two, and we'll pay for the rest of the time that we spend there, I'll do free programs for your campers. I'll come in, twice a summer or 3 times a summer, because people cycle out, once a month or whatever. Sure. I'll come and do free programs, and it gives your campers an opportunity to learn something, get hands-on with, they'll see water snakes and they'll see snapping turtles and they see stuff around the pond anyway. So you want to build that relationship with reptiles and with your native wildlife. So being able to do those programs there, coupled with the amount of people who are enjoying nature and everything, was great.
Yeah, that's awesome, man.
Yeah.
If I can, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, because that, and then fast forward to now, like last year before COVID hit, we were doing tours at Nerd. We would do public tours every weekend. So every Saturday and every Sunday, people show up at 4 p.m. and whoever shows up can take a tour. It was like $8 a person, where you can pet a reticulated python, hold a ball python, check out a water monitor, see our caimans, see our snapping turtles, see a venomous snake in person, behind glass, but see a venomous snake in person. And before COVID, we literally, just from word of mouth, we advertised it a little bit online, but we didn't really advertise it online. Before COVID hit, every Saturday for 2 months before COVID hit, we had at least 75 people show up.
That's amazing.
That's awesome, man.
Our biggest tour was 130 people at Nerd.
Have you guys done
anything? Nerd, and that's a lot of people to be
in
there.
Insane amount of people to be upstairs in that building. Probably not safe, probably not legal, but
a lot of those corridors look pretty narrow.
They are very narrow.
And then add Kevin into the mix, and so.
Oh my goodness. So literally, that when I first started doing the tours at Nerd, it was like 10 people that showed up on the weekends, on like Saturday or Sunday. Like 10 people would show up. They were usually reptile people. They usually already knew about Nerd. They knew about all the things.
It's a niche thing, yeah.
Very niche. And then as I started doing programs and teaching the guys at Nerd how to do programs, how I do them, and sharing the knowledge and showing people why they should appreciate these animals. At the end of the tour, I would say, hey, if you had a good time, tell somebody about the tour. Have them come check it out. If you know somebody that's afraid of snakes, bring them with you next time so that we can get them over their fear of snakes. And literally, I would have people who showed up and would take a tour once a month or once every other week. Like literally, people who would come for like multiple tours. And the information didn't change a ton, especially when we had all those big tours, because the purpose of those tours initially for me was to show people what's cool about Nerd, but also to introduce people to reptiles, because most people's, like the average person, their experience with reptiles is like, I saw the movie Anaconda, I saw the movie Holes, and my friend in elementary school had a bearded dragon. Like that's the only thing that people know about
Very
reptiles.
minimal. And I have an uncle or a father that thinks all snakes
should die. Yeah. So starting from there, and then showing people why they should appreciate reptiles, and not just that, but the cool animals that we work with at Nerd, that spreads. And we had so many people that would show up afraid of reptiles and leave wanting their own pet reptile. And
I love that so much.
Just from word of mouth, just getting people, or you know what, we would get a family where the kid was super into reptiles and nobody else in the family was into reptiles. And then at the end of the tour, they're like, okay, maybe these things aren't that bad. And going, just progress small steps. If you try to get to the top of the Empire State Building in one step, you're never going to get there. Yeah. But if you take small steps every time, it might take you a while, but you can get to the top.
There's an old video, Rob. It's a Nerd video from a couple years ago. And in the video, you're showing this. It's a small group. It's a family, and you're showing them a hognose snake.
Oh yeah.
Like you're talking to them and you're telling them, all these different things that a hognose snake will do. From puffing up to playing dead. All this different stuff. And you were talking about the misidentification of things with copperheads and all these different animals, and that one really hit home for me. Because being where I'm from in the South, and I even told you this when I was at Nerd, we were looking at some of your Nerodia, and I was saying how much I love Nerodia species because, I grew up down here where I can catch Nerodia all day long. But at the same time, I see hundreds and hundreds of diamondback water snakes or, plain bellied or banded, whatever, get killed all the time because every snake people see around the water, that's a cottonmouth. And, doing what you were doing and showing just tiny details on how people can identify from a distance, that means a lot to me because it breaks my heart to see people all day long saying, well, I killed this snake because it was going to hurt my dog or hurt my kids. That animal couldn't do anything to you or your dog or your kid. And, even if it was a venomous snake, call somebody, call me at any time. I will come and remove it, and take it back where it needs to be. But, showing those little markers, showing the little things like that, that's very important to me.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the things that I always encourage people is that if you don't know what kind of snake you're looking at, don't touch it. What's a good way to get bit by a snake? Getting close to it. Even if your intention is to kill it, you're getting too close. You're getting too close for comfort. If you walk the other direction, there's no chance of it biting you. Guess
what? Zero chance you're going to get bit. Zero chance anyone's going to get hurt and go to the hospital. Because I don't remember the exact statistics, but it's a tremendously large percentage of snake bites in the United States, they're on the hands and the face, and it's and basically it comes down to people either trying to kill rattlesnakes or I think rattlesnakes from what I understand is the most common, trying to either kill them or literally being drunk and trying to mess with them, trying to handle them. Mm-hmm. Those are the two most common causes for exactly. Those are the two most common causes for snake bites in the United States. Basically stupidity, literally because you're being dumb. So again, just going back to it, man, just that little bit of education, it's amazing. I mean, as short of a period of time that I've been posting anything about my snake stuff and social media and stuff, since my friends and family and stuff now know that I mess with these animals, I get texts all the time. My buddy was out with his daughter the other day. They were walking through a national park, and he sends me a picture of this huge, gorgeous water snake. I mean, absolutely beautiful, just a beautiful specimen, beautiful picture. And he's like, dude, what is this? I have no idea what it is. And then I told him, and he's like, man, thank you so much. He's like, my dad thought it was a cottonmouth, of course. Boy. And even posted about it on Facebook, and somebody was like, oh my God, what is that? Is that a cottonmouth? And he's like, no. He's like, my buddy actually told me it's just a water snake, you know, because they can be big and ominous looking, you know, because they're kind of dark colored and you know they're just kind of chilling by the water, since you know it's easy for us to kind of end up like right on top of one if we're, you know, flipping rocks in the creek or, you know, playing around or whatever. But I love that, you know, again, just that's just me in a short period of time having an impact even just on the people that I know and the friends that I have. And so I think that just again goes back to the importance of just all of us doing our best to be ambassadors, you know, and not being afraid to like let that reptile flag fly and let people know that this is the stuff we're into, you know, and not being embarrassed about it the way that's, you know, again, those kids that we all were as kids, where it was the weird, creepy thing, where thankfully a lot of us, I think, were those confident children that were like, oh, this is creepy and weird, and it makes my teacher nervous. Like that makes it even cooler to me. Like I love that it makes you uncomfortable, because I think they're even more neat now that I see you squirm. Like that's the way that I was as a kid. You know, we used to surprise my grandparents with snakes, bringing them into the house and scaring the hell out of them, and everything else. And that was like even more of the draw, you know, was that stuff. And I think a lot of us that were that way, but we can't forget that there are also definitely those kids that are not that way, where they loved that snake that they caught out in the yard or whatever. And they were told immediately, like yelled at and berated by their parents that, oh, snakes are bad and you should never do this again. Yeah. And that conversation has to have happened thousands of times and has to have killed numerous kids' drive of something that they might have loved if they had been given a little bit of encouragement and a little bit of positivity, as opposed to that negative reaction, right? Like it's a weird, deep thing to think about, but you got to think about how many kids' lives would be different if their response if their parents' response to that kid's first interaction with a reptile was more positive than negative. Or more educated, I guess, would be the better way to put it.
The
right?
Importance, you know,
yeah,
exactly.
Just education. It's just we keep coming back to it, but it's just the facts.
So, Rob, at what point in all of your keeping from being a child, doing your education, all that stuff, did you decide that you wanted to attempt breeding different species?
Yes.
I was never really like super crazy about breeding. Like I knew that I wanted to work with reptiles, but I wasn't specifically like, oh, I want to be a breeder. I want to like work with, you know, doing a bunch of morphs and all this stuff. I was really focused on the education when I was younger. And then trying to think, like when ball python morphs came out, I was like, okay, those are too expensive. I can't do any of that. I bred some leopard geckos that I had when I was really young. But that wasn't like me trying to be a breeder or anything. It was like I had a bunch of leopard geckos and they started reproducing. So
it happens.
It happens, yeah. The ball pythons, when ball python prices started to come down, I was like, maybe I could like do some of this stuff. And I knew I always wanted to work with bloods and short tail pythons. And, you know, back in the day, they were not a very easy thing to breed. So I didn't really have any huge aspirations of breeding them. I was hopeful that I would be able to do it one day, but I wasn't like, you know, oh, I'm going to buy a pair and do this and do that. I was kind of like, you know, I would like to keep them and, you know, if I breed them one day, that's cool. And that's kind of how I started things out. But maybe when I was like, trying to think, 17 or 18, like right around when I first started going to Nerd, like I kind of saw some things and I was like, oh, I would like to make one of those. Like when I saw the first bumblebee ball python, I was like, oh wow, those are
still beautiful.
I don't have a lot of ball. I think I've got like 3 ball pythons or 4 ball pythons or something. One of them is a bumblebee because the first time I saw one of those, I was just like blown away. The green eyes, yellow, the white on the sides. I love a bumblebee with white sides, man.
Yeah. Yes.
Doesn't get any cooler than that.
They're beautiful.
So I was like, I would love to work and breed one of those. Those things are just amazing. And then Borneos, I was like, I would like to just make Borneos because Borneos are amazing. Yeah. And that's it. I didn't really have any crazy aspirations for like morphs or any of that sort of stuff. Yeah. But I learned about all that stuff. I think that's the important thing, is that even though I wasn't like, oh, I'm going to be a breeder, I'm going to do this. Because when people would ask me when I was like literally 5 and 6 years old, people would ask me what I wanted to be when I grew up. I would tell them I want to be a herpetologist.
Yeah.
And
Well,
then
because
they
we
would ask,
again, it was the '90s. Like,
Yeah.
to be clear, like that wasn't a choice. That wasn't an option that was on the table for us, dude. If like, and I think you would agree, if somebody had told me when I was in third grade and I was staying after because my third grade teacher had a ball python that on Wednesdays she would feed, and if I got my parents' permission, I could stay late on Wednesdays to watch her feed it. Like if somebody had told me at that age that, hey, you can actually have a career breeding reptiles or you know what I mean? Like any career, like name anything. Like I wanted to work at a zoo when I was in elementary school, same thing, but I wanted to work in the reptile house. Like that was my dream goal in my head. How I expected that to pay my bills or like what job it was not a thought in my head. I was just like, this is what, like, I would love to be able to do this. But it was not ever presented to me as an option. So therefore I never latched onto it. It was just like, okay, this is the thing I like, and everything else will just kind of come. But no, I think that makes perfect sense.
I think it was like 96, but Reptiles Magazine put out an article that was like, make a living working with reptiles. And it was like 6
I remember
things
that.
you could do.
I remember that.
6 things that you could do to work with reptiles full time. And so I had like literally had that page creased in my magazine, like wore it out. And like, they were like, oh, there's 4 schools in the United States that have herpetology programs. You can go to Cornell, you can go to Harvard, University of Florida, or I think it was like University of Miami or University of Arizona. And so I was just like reading those, and I was like, oh man, I got to go to one of those schools so that I can do a thing with reptiles. And they were like,
yeah, because you start drawing those lines. I don't think a lot of people realize how early a lot of people start drawing those lines of like, okay, well, this is what I want to do. Like that's the goal. And so again, just that importance of just that early on interaction and introducing that obsession.
One of my things that always was in the back of my mind, my wheels turning like that, was I'm from Arkansas and Texas is right there. So I always wanted to go work with the Barkers, like I wanted to go with, Mr. Dave and Miss Tracy Barker right there in Texas. And like, I was always had it in my head, like I can go right, to the next state, and I got family over here and, and they know everything. And still, and I've told this story 1,000 times, but I'm going to tell it to you, Rob, because it really does mean so much to me. Like one of my reptile highlights of my life was a few years ago at NARBC Arlington. Myself, Brian Cusco, and Forrest Fanning, we sat for probably 4 hours. And Mr. Dave Barker just dropped a ton of knowledge on us, man. Like just sat and like he just talked to us privately. And like Miss Tracy was like, you guys scoot over, you're in the way of the booth, like, but he just kept and like I could have listened to that man talk for the rest of my life and never, got bored with it. Like
I'm so jealous.
It was amazing.
That's incredible. Yeah, I got to meet Tracy when I went to Daytona in 2009, and I talked with her a little bit about blood pythons, but I was just like, oh my God, Tracy Barker. And I was like, I don't want to take up her time. I don't want, she's vending the expo. I was just like, I'm going to talk to her about blood pythons a little bit, and then maybe I can talk to her later. And I didn't really get to end up talking to her that much.
Yeah.
But, I've emailed with her a little bit, and those are 2 people who I just have like this tremendous amount of respect for. And
you should bridge that gap, dude. Seriously, you should make that connection now. Like, do it. Reach out. Fucking go visit. Like you know what I mean. Like you have that ability now. I hope you know that. Like you know what I mean. You can reach out and literally like that's amazing. You should take advantage of that.
Yeah, I think they're. I would love.
I know they're still hard to get a hold of. I know, yeah. So.
Well, I literally emailed her last week because I just bought some snakes from her. So
yeah,
I'll be like, hey, after the snake comes in, I got to come down and say hi. I got to come say what's up.
For sure, man. I mean, make a whole thing of it. But seriously, I think that would be huge. And I would even mention like the whole like early on like that. I really wanted to meet you guys years and years ago, and now I own some of your snakes and like. Yeah, we're both doing this thing, and no, dude, I think that would be tremendous, and I think that they would appreciate that. I know that they're like less big into like the limelight stuff and all that, and understandably so. I mean, if you don't need it, there's a lot of stress that comes along with the exposure. And
man, their knowledge supersedes anything else.
It goes so deep. Literally, they're those people where like you would have a 5-minute conversation with them where a lot of things that they said they wouldn't find the value in, they wouldn't seem important to them.
Yeah.
I heard something recently where somebody was talking about how they were saying, for example, they were like Michael Jordan. They're like, there's a reason he's a terrible coach. They're like, he's so good at what he does that the intricacies of why he's so good are lost upon him. He literally doesn't realize, and they're the same way. They really don't realize how important the little things they do are, to the point they won't even talk about them, because to them it's just the way they operate. It's just the way they do things. It's just their standard, that they wouldn't even be able to teach somebody else to do what they do.
Yeah,
because they're not even conscious of the important pieces of what they do. I talk about this all the time on this podcast, but I just recently, literally yesterday, heard somebody put it the right way, which was like that the people that are great at what they do, just a lot of times they miss the little specific things that they do that make them good. And so that's why it's good to observe them doing what they do rather than ask them about what they do and how they do it.
Yeah.
If that makes any sense. I've talked about it before on how video, like YouTube's helpful to learn things, because I learned a lot of times by just watching people do stuff and how they do it versus the way they explain it. Because I'm like, oh, you did this a certain way and you didn't even mention that little detail of like, oh, well, yeah, there's this little thing that I do otherwise. Like, but I caught it on camera. I saw, and you literally wasn't even important enough for you to mention. But anyways, that's just a,
That's how Kevin is, honestly. Like, I see a lot of people who come
exactly
to Nerd, and Kevin's like, oh, well, you just got to like build this little thread. You got to do this little thing. And then I look at the person's face, and it's just like
glazed over.
Yeah,
because it doesn't make sense.
Yeah. And he's operating at like this really high advanced
totally
level
different
that's
level.
hard for people to understand. And that's one of the things that I feel like I bring to the table at Nerd, is that I'm kind of in that middle, like as far as like people in the building go, and like wealth of knowledge and range of knowledge, Kevin is like beyond everybody and everything. But from him stepping down, it's usually me that's up there. When people have questions about random things, they almost always come to me and ask me about it. If it has to do with colibrids, monitors, turtles, anything, they usually come to me. Because Rob knows something about it, and most of the time I do, but sometimes I don't. And for me, I'm operating at that level of, I've been spending so much time trying to explain reptiles in this like deep understanding that I have of them, but trying to express it to a 5-year-old, and how a
exactly
child
right
understand a bearded dragon, or understand a Jacobson's organ, or understand, UV light or something like that. I spent so much time, because when I was little, I was one of those people who was just like using scientific names and doing all this stuff. And my mom would constantly be telling me, dumb it down. If I can't understand what you're saying, the people can't understand what you're saying. Dumb it down, dumb it down, dumb it down, dumb it down. And so I've gotten really good at expressing the ideas that I understand at a higher level in a really broken down, finite way. And I think that that's one of the reasons why a lot of people who like enjoy the Nerd videos like seeing me on the videos, because I can take Kevin's concept that he understands at this like high, FBI level, and I can break it down where like you might not, might not be for everybody, but if you have a little bit of, base knowledge, you can really understand the things that he's pointing out.
Way more important, Rob. It's way more important. Somebody told me years and years ago, I was teaching someone to drive stick, and but it's the same thing. They were like, the way,
which is a goal of Rob's, by the way.
It is a goal of mine. I don't know how to do that yet, so I'm gonna have to come and visit.
I'll teach you. I will teach you, because I'll tell you. I explained it to somebody one time, and they were like, "Man, you're the first person to explain to me like what is happening while I'm
doing it."
Because that's what I dude. I struggle with that. I don't know if it's like I have ADD really bad. I have a little bit of OCD. Like I got all kinds of weird shit going on in my brain. Mm-hmm. Once I understand how something works, I'm like, oh, I can totally do that.
Yeah.
like once I understood what a clutch master cylinder was and like the mechanical things that were happening in the car as I pressed pedals and shit, I was like, oh, I could do that in my brain, and literally just, it broke the code for me as to like the process. But again, I explained that to somebody that was learning stick, like exactly what was happening while they were doing things. And they're like, holy shit, it just clicked in my head and now I can do it. You know, it's one of those weird things, you know, once you understand the concept, you're just like, oh, yep, now it works. You know?
Exactly.
So yeah, it's important to be that person that can explain it in a dumb way, because I don't need to tell somebody like, oh yeah, so what you're pressing on is the clutch master cylinder, and that's got a line that goes to the slave. They don't need to know that shit, but they need to know like the you know the dumb version of like, oh yeah, you press this and it pushes this thing out. And it causes this to happen. You push this in and it turns something off. And they're like, oh, yeah, okay. Yeah,
I understand that. Yeah.
It's like, I get that. I can work with that. But it's breaking complicated things down into simple information that's easy to digest, that's still accurate, is a tremendous skill. And I was going to say, man, the stuff that I've seen from you on the way you give your presentations and stuff is tremendous. And I really, really mean that compliment. Because it's not easy. It's not easy to do, especially for us guys that are interested in this stuff at the level that we are, right? Mm-hmm. Like I'm not at the point where I'm using scientific names for things. And I think a lot of that is because most of the people I interact with, like if I use those, they wouldn't have a clue. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I'm not wired that way to even bother to remember them, because again, I'm talking to just, you know, normal people most of the time. But yeah, that's an important thing. And dude, I want to transition really quick, just from like the snake stuff and all that. I want to transition into a little bit of business talk, because that's the stuff that I love. And I always kind of, I pick up on the little things, like the underlying things that people talk about. And you mentioned early on how your mom talked about you doing the presentations basically as a way to pay for the snakes. And I love that, because I'm like, the business hasn't changed. Nothing has changed at all. Like, all of us, like whether it's through YouTube or Instagram or whatever, like at the end of the day, we hear it repeated over and over ad nauseum. Like if I can just make enough money to cover my rat bill at the end of the month, like
that's all I care about. That's all I care about. And then maybe buy new pages sometimes.
Break it even.
Yeah. And so I love hearing that was basically how it was for you guys in the 90s. But also I'm intrigued at the idea of a mother who has this teenage son that loves this stuff, and her immediate thought was to or maybe not immediate, but like her thought was to transition into a business for you guys, and for you guys to be able to pay for what you were doing off of that. Because again, to me, like as a like that tells me that your mom obviously had to have a business mind to some degree. You know, she might not have been some fucking CEO business genius, but her mind was in the state where you can. A lot of people are not capable of taking an idea of something that you enjoy and transitioning it into something that makes you money. Yeah, and I love that she presented that pretty upfront and early on. So I'm just kind of curious if that rubbed off on you, and kind of how that transition was from just like, this is a thing I do for fun, and then like, this is a business, because a lot of people don't even know the steps to make that happen, et cetera. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I think that a lot of people, when they look at making their hobby a business, they go, oh, I made $100 today, I can make this a business. And it's so far removed from that. It's not. Like, you might have gone to an expo and made $1,000, but our liability insurance to do programs for the year was $1,200 back then. So I don't know what the liability insurance for a small business today to do the same sort of thing would be. I'm guessing it's probably somewhere between $2,000 and $2,500 a year.
That's what I say. At least double, if not triple. Perfect.
Yeah. So you have to think that, one, your time is valuable, because a lot of people go, oh, well, like, I enjoy doing these programs, so I'll just charge like $50 or $100, and you know, maybe if I really work hard at it, I'll be able to like do this. And at the end of the day, it's going to cut into, one, your enjoyment of it. It's going to cut into your ability to actually make a sustainable business, because it's expensive. Gas time, like your time is one of your most valuable resources. And
what I was literally going to say. People forget to pay themselves. Like,
Yeah.
even if it's in your own head, you need to remember to account for that.
Yeah.
Because even just breeding, just if we use that as an example, if I was going to breed full time, well, I need to now replace my income that I make at my day job
Yeah.
with what I'm doing breeding. So I need to look at what I make at my day job, and I need to charge myself that per hour
at least
every night when I'm clean. At least, yeah, at minimum, I need to charge myself that at night when I'm cleaning snakes. And I need to do that math and make sure that I can afford to pay that to myself. And if I can't, then there's no way I can do this sustainably full time.
Mhm.
That's why I love this conversation, because a lot of people don't see all the angles.
Yeah.
So
And you got to figure that, no matter whether you're looking at breeding your snakes, you're looking at doing educational programs, you're looking at, the various feeders or whatever, you have to take into account, one, you're spending money to do it in one way or another. So you have to get paid somewhere along the line to make sure that you still got money to feed yourself, to pay your electricity, to pay your food, and all that sort of stuff. And then you have to, the value in your time thing is most important for me, because like when I first started doing educational programs, I think we charged like $125 for an hour long program. And like some people will look at that and like $125 an hour, that's great. And it's like, well, it wasn't just the program. It's setting up all the animals in containers to pack into your car, to drive to wherever you're going to go, do your hour-long program, then pack everything back up into your car, take another trip home, unpack everyone, the amount of stress that it causes on the animals, because it is stressful on the animals. And with some animals, it's more stressful than others. Doing reptile expos, same thing. If you're like, I don't want to do education, I want to breed, going to expos, shipping animals. What happens if something happens during shipment and the animal dies? What happens
if the snakes get mites, or what? Okay, so then, okay, well, I'll start treating my snakes for mites as soon as they come back from shows and quarantining. Okay, well, now you've got added cost for quarantine area and everything else. So just all that adds and adds. And so that's why I say a lot of people don't think about those sunken costs of things, of like, oh, well, I can totally do this full time because I made $30,000 last year selling ball pythons. Well, did you though? Because you probably didn't. You probably broke even, or maybe you probably lost money for most of us.
I say either that, or
no matter how much you're selling,
made like $1,000. So you look at like 30,000, you're like, I sold this much and I made 30,000. And it's like, yeah, but how much did you spend to make that 30,000? It's like your food bill was 8,000 for the year, and then your travel expenses, your shipping, your buses, electricity, all that sort of stuff. So you might only made $1,000, and you're thinking 30,000, when in reality the actual number is 1,000, and you cannot live your year on $1,000 no matter what you do.
Sure.
And Zach always, like, that's one of Zach's things that he does every week is talk business, and it's where his interest is. You coming from, you and your mom starting a business together to where you're at now in business at a facility like Nerd, working with Kevin, and, where do you see the trajectory of the reptile business right now? Do you think that we're in an incline, or we're kind of steady where where do you foresee the reptile business in 5 years?
The hobby as a whole?
Yes.
I think that various aspects of the hobby are really growing, and there's great opportunity for expansion. And then I see some parts of the hobby that are, I don't want to say like their days are numbered, but they had their heyday, and it's not going to be like it was. Like, I don't want to call anyone out or anything like that, but I think that the days of people breeding huge numbers of big mainland reticulated pythons are really...
Yeah. I think that writing has been on the wall. That writing has been on the wall, I think, for way longer than what people realize. For sure. Yeah.
And then, I don't want to like dwell on that like negative stuff all that much, but like
sure,
the one aspect of the hobby that's like growing exponentially. And if you haven't noticed, it's like it's branching out past the walls of the conventional hobby as like isopods and like
Yes.
designer little
Most
isopods and
definitely.
stuff.
It's so under the radar because
Yeah.
I heard of I realized that market was booming probably about a year ago,
Mhm.
and I've kind of halfway followed it. It's crazy, man. It's crazy.
It is.
And plants is also blowing up, which is
Just
very
everything
interesting.
involved in the bioactive, you know.
That's exactly what I was gonna say. Bioactive is really coming on heavily.
Yeah.
And I think anybody that's not following that is missing out.
Yeah,
Myself
there's definitely huge room for growth in the hobby when it comes to those sort of things. But the way that the hobby is right now, it's in a huge transition phase,
Sure.
and it's going to be real tough because either people are going to have to get real cool about stuff real quick, or
I love the way you put that. Yes.
or
It's the truth, though.
Yeah, it's because there's a lot of people who look at like Nerd with, you know, racks of ball pythons and look at other breeders who are doing, you know, large volumes of snakes, and they're going, oh, you guys are horrible, you're terrible, we need to get rid of you, the hobby doesn't need you. And the hidden undertone in that, or the hidden like cost in that, is that if those places don't exist, the cost of everything that you want to get is going to go like
skyrocket,
astronomically
Yes.
high, because the supply is way higher than the demand. But right now we're kind of, it's almost like ball pythons are kind of at an equilibrium right now, where most of it's kind of equaled out, where there's some people who are investing and they're getting the high end stuff and doing whatever, and they're trying to make the Justin Kobelka stuff and the Aussie Boys and the Nerd stuff. And then there's a lot of people who just like do 1 or 2 clutches a year, and they just do like fancy stuff that they like. But it's kind of like evened out. But if like Aussie and Justin and Nerd and, you know, some of the bigger people stop doing that stuff, and you're just relying on someone who's got only bioactive enclosures for their 10 ball pythons, you're never going to be able to afford any sort of cool morph that you saw that you
Right.
wanted. It just is not,
because you'd have to triple the price to keep them in such a manner. If you want to every ball python that is bred to live in a 2x2 or whatever enclosure, that's great. That's fine. But be prepared to be hit with the price tag of $200 for a normal ball python.
At least.
Which again is fine. If that's the way the market wants to regulate, if that's where the market's going to land, guess what? Cool. We'll fill that demand. We will fill that demand. The market will adjust and will make it so. But is the market willing to do that? And I don't think that the market is. And people always say, or just really that, you know, what we hear all the time, and I think it's true. The market's always right. I say it all the time. That's you know, I heard that from Gary Vee, I think the first time I heard it, and I stand behind it. The market is always right. When it comes to pricing, whether you think it's right, wrong, or otherwise, it does not fucking matter. The market is right.
At the end of the day, people are going to buy it from somebody else, so they don't buy it from you. So
100%.
And that's what it all really boils down to.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. So if the demand is there, the money is going out the door. But whether it's going into your pocket or not, it's going somewhere. And somebody's always going to find a way to supply that $50 ball python, realistically, until the market adjusts and says, we don't want a $50 ball python because it was bred in a rack. Well, guess what? I don't see it happening. It could. I don't see it happening where the entire market all of a sudden says, I refuse to buy a ball python that was bred in a rack. And I think that's because of the fact that all of us know, realistically, ball pythons do wonderfully in racks. Well, they're happy. They're healthy. They seem to honestly, you know, they seem to thrive. Again, I'm not trying to spark that argument, but
even outside of that, you know, you can have these aspirations of all this grandeur, this magnificent stuff, but let's break it down and outside of reptiles, outside of that, how many people are unhappy with shit that Walmart does? Yet
Yeah.
everybody's gonna fucking go to Walmart because
Yeah.
they get a cheap price.
Or Amazon or whoever it is.
Bill right down the street owns Bill's Food Market, but in order for Bill to stay in business, he has to charge a little bit more than this global monster.
Yeah. Well, and the issue that arises,
this global monster, even though they're doing fucked up shit. You know,
the issue that arises is that there are some people that will say that, oh, well, this is why the reptile hobby needs to be regulated. This is why we need government influence to tell people that you're required.
No, we do not.
But that's my point. That's 100% my point. But what I'm getting at is that this conversation is where this other conversation comes from, because people are like, oh, well, then if that's the case, you need to regulate it to make it happen. You need to regulate the market. Markets should not be regulated. I don't want to get into a big political thing, but I don't believe any market should be regulated. I think that if you leave people the fuck alone, eventually prices will land where they need to be, and practices will land where they need to be, because, again, people will always vote with their dollar. But, you know, there's always a line to everything. But that was kind of what I was curious about, was just, you know, from the business side of things. And I'm also curious, Rob, like, dude, what's your long-term plan for yourself, your collection, your animals? Like, obviously you work with Nerd, and maybe I'm asking to talk about something out of pocket a little bit, but, you know, again, I'm just kind of curious, like, where your head's at. You know, you've been doing this for a very long time. I love your presentations. I'm curious if you guys are going to do some virtual tours or anything like that for Nerd. I think that would be cool, the way Barczyk's doing. I think that would be a tremendous thing for you guys. And but again, just on a personal level, like, you know, what's your dream for yourself, you know?
That's been like evolving a lot over the last 5 years or so. So I don't even know exactly what that's going to be. Kevin's been talking a lot about kind of doing a reptarium type situation at Nerd, where he opens up a zoo, basically, where we can have, you know, king cobras on display and our caiman and water monitors and all sorts of stuff like that. And that's interesting to me, because I love doing the education. Like, education is probably my favorite aspect of my job.
Yeah, that seems to be your passion, and it seems, honestly, dude, that's where your skill set's at. Like, I'm not kidding when I say it. Like, having seen even just clips of your presentations, man, you're super talented in that way. Not everybody can speak to that kind of crowd the way that you do, and engage people and be comical while also presenting factual information and stuff. You do a great job, man. Seriously.
I try. It's taken a long time of being really bad.
Yeah, you've had the time. And again, that's what I love. And that's why I love this question, because I'm like, man, this is a guy who literally, since he was a teenager, has been doing these presentations. And you have the opportunity to keep doing that for the rest of your life, man. Like you're at your prime. Like, you're still, like, right there killing it.
Yeah. I don't know exactly what my path holds for the next couple of years, or even beyond that. I mean, I want to try and breed my scrub pythons. That's like my life goal. If I can breed scrub pythons, I'll be satisfied, just because I love them so much, and they're challenging. I bred so many different species between working where I'm at now and working at the shop that I managed in Maine and doing my own thing. You know, I've worked with so many different species. I've bred a variety of different species. I've learned so much, and I love doing the education probably the most, because it allows me to share the things that I've learned over the years. Because one of the things that when I came to Nerd, that I really wanted to push, I was like, Kevin, you've got these amazing things here, and there's a lot of people who have no clue about the thing that you're doing. You gotta share it. You gotta share it, man, and you gotta make it accessible to people. Because if one of the things that I tell Kevin all the time is, like, you can have the most knowledge, the most information, the most amazing things on the planet, but if you don't spread that around and share that with the people around you, even if it's not like on a global level, just sharing it to specific people who will appreciate it, it's a waste of all that energy. And for me, all that energy needs to be spread around, you know.
Especially what Kevin has, man. Like it's, and I told you this when I got to Nerd. Like the only person I've ever met in my life that I was almost intimidated by to have a conversation, just spark up, was Kevin at Tinley, because it's almost, I have nothing that I can offer this man. You know,
that's a lie. That's a lie.
Well, in my mind, like, you know, he has so much knowledge, and it's not just things that other people have written down that he's read. Like, he's broken a code, you know, interacting with these animals on his own, using his own methods. And like, it was daunting, you know, it was intimidating. But then after meeting Kevin and like hanging out with Kevin and, you know, doing what we did, like, Kevin operates on a different level than most people operate. Like, he really does. And he's not trying to be something that he's not. Like, he's not having a facade. Like, his brain really works that way. And he I mean, just in simple conversation, just looking at different things, like I was learning the whole time I was around Kevin. And like, I love that. Like, that's amazing. Yeah. But at the same time, somebody like you can take that superlative information that Kevin has, and you can share it to people that don't and like you were saying earlier,
filter it down.
It's you guys are right there together, and it's perfect. Like, it's a beautiful pair, man. It really is.
Yeah. And like the thing that you were saying before, like, what can you bring to Kevin? What could you teach Kevin? Even like when I was a kid, when I was little, and Reptiles magazine came out, when the first spider ball pythons came out, Kevin took out an ad in there that said, "Along came a spider." It's got all these different spider morph pictures. I cut that out. I put that on my wall. I was like so geeked out by. I had cutouts from all the different ads that they had with croc monitors in it, and blood pythons and reticulated pythons and all this sort of stuff. And so going from that to like working with Kevin on an everyday basis and being the person where when he needs backup, working with king cobras, or when they're moving, anacondas or ultrasounding monitors, he's like, "Rob, I need you in here. We got to get you in here." It was humbling, but when I came to Nerd, I was like, what am I going to teach Kevin? Like, Kevin knows literally everything. And then through working with him, there's been a bunch of stuff that I taught Kevin. He's like, I didn't know that. I had no idea. And it's like, for me, I was like, what do you mean you don't know that? That's like the thing that I've known about forever. And it's like, no matter how long you're on this planet, there's information that you're going to learn that somebody else is not going to learn, that they're not going to know, and ways that you do things that other people are not going to do things. One of the things that I bring up on like a bunch of the podcasts that I've talked about is the arboreal hides for like Amazon tree boas, and it works for scrubs and like other arboreal snakes. If you go to not Walmart, you go to Home Depot or Lowe's or something, they got that black corrugated rib tubing, and they sell it in like 10 or 12 foot long sections. Yeah. And you take that and cut it into like 8-inch or 12-inch sections, and you can zip tie it, like drill holes in the sides of your enclosure or your tub, zip tie it to the sides or to the top, and it creates this arboreal hide up off the ground that's basically disposable. So if they ruin it for some reason, you can just chuck it because it's like $8. Yeah, exactly. But when I showed that to Kevin for the first time, he was like, "What? Are you kidding me?"
What?
He never would have thought of that, or like, not that he never would have thought about it, but like when he saw it, he was like, "That makes
it's
sense."
Perspective, Rob. What you're talking about is perspective.
Exactly.
It's just little things. It's a stupid thing. I had a buddy. He wanted me to put a lightweight crank pulley on his car. And I was a garage mechanic for years, and I still am. I've worked cars for a long time. And I needed a way to hold his crank in place while we zipped it off. And for those who don't know, a crankshaft, like pulley, they spin while you're trying to loosen them. So you can't loosen it with normal tools. Like you need something to hold it in place while you fucking loosen this bolt. I was like, hey man, take your belt off. And he's like, what? I was like, just take your belt off really quick. And he's like, okay. Hands me his belt. And I wrapped his belt around the pulley and wrapped the belt around itself so that his belt wouldn't allow the pulley to turn. He's like, how the fuck do you think that? I was like, I don't know, man. I just looked at it for long enough and I realized that I need this thing to not turn. And I realized if I wrap something around it that has some surface area, like it's just dumb shit, but it's just also experience. I'm like, I've swapped engines out in this carport for like 6 years and used random bullshit tools to, to make things happen for long enough to where like you identify areas of opportunity using random shit. But it's the same concept, so the same concept is like, you were walking through a hardware store one day and you were like, oh shit, this tubing, like, oh man, it's super cheap and I could cut it down to shorter pieces or like, or like using PVC as those PVC couplers as water dishes, like a lot of people do. Same thing. Somebody was walking through a Home Depot one day and was like, oh shit, that's the same size as my water dishes. Those are like 50 cents a piece. Let me just use those instead of like making something or whatever.
Or buying.
But again, this comes back to what I was saying earlier. Like we always come full circle in this podcast. I was talking earlier about how kids at a young age speaking up and being confident about their passions and talking about things that excite them. Dude, I love the moment where you're again talking about how you started working with Kevin. You're like, oh, what can I teach him? And I love that you're talking about something that you proposed to Kevin that got him excited that he never thought about before. You as this young kid and, talking to, again, Kevin McCurley, like the king should have turned mountain of fucking reptile hobby. Like, in your mind, like the guy that should know all the answers, should know everything. And yet you, first of all, two things, you were able to teach him something. And second of all, he was willing to learn something from you. Cause that says a lot about Kevin too. Yeah, Kevin is not opposed to anyone teaching him something, and that's important. I tell people all the time, the second you decide in your own mind that you know everything about a subject, no matter what it is, you are fucked because you officially are done with ever progressing in that thing that you think you know everything about. Yeah. And that's fucking huge, man. And again, like, I'm the same way. I mean, I put Kevin on a pedestal, like, because again, he's been in the fucking hobby forever. He's got this great vision. He's got this Kevin amazing. He's fucking exactly like that's all I need to say. He's fucking Kevin McCurley, And I know he's caught a lot of shit in the last number of years or whatever. And I think a lot of that was just because he wasn't public. You know what I mean? He wasn't there to defend himself. He didn't have a public persona. And so I think he caught a lot of shit for that more than anything, because it was just like, this guy's just out of the limelight. We can just say whatever. But no, I put him on that same, plane. And so again, to hear that he's that guy, and it doesn't surprise me, but to hear that he's that guy that's like, yes, I love these animals. I know what the fuck I'm doing with all these animals. Like, I know how to teach them and do all these crazy behavioral things with fucking Cayman and blah, blah, blah. To hear that he is also the same guy that's willing to let a Rob is Creeping It Real teach him some shit about some random stuff that's reptile related is fucking cool and totally makes sense. Because again, I don't think you end up at that level that he's at generally, without being open to outside information. And that's awesome, man. That's really fucking cool. I think it speaks highly for this hobby.
We've had you for a little over an hour, and what I want to do now, real quick, I want to segue into our 3 segments that we do, and
let's do it.
So our first one, like I said, is musician or band of the week. Can be anybody from the past, the present, just something that you've been listening to that you want to, tell our listeners, our watchers, hey, check this out.
Oh man, this is so bad because I've been listening to a lot of rap, a lot of like deathcore, and then like dubstep a lot
You
recently.
fit perfect in this group because we go everywhere from deathcore to R&B, anything you want, man.
I mean, DMX died today, so we get it.
Yeah, I'm. How about this? I'm gonna go with like this album that I've been loving for the last 2 years. Carnifex Slow Death.
Oh my god,
that album is just it's like melodic blackened deathcore, and it's just it's amazing. The whole thing, start to finish, is incredible, and I just like I'm in love with it.
I'm all pumped up that you say that because when I first was introduced to Carnifex, I didn't know who the fuck Carnifex was, and I had bought tickets to a concert, and the concert was Lamb of God, Suicide Silence, Attila, and Carnifex. And I had never heard of Carnifex, so like I started looking them up and shit. And I was like, man, Carnifex is badass. I was like, they're going to fucking steal the show. You know, like, dude, I get in the pit, Carnifex is going off, and I was literally in the fucking mix of the pit, and like I stopped and stood still because their drummer, dude, their fucking drummer, like he's just ripping blast beats and shit. But the whole time he's flipping sticks and twirling sticks in the middle of this crazy ass fucking drum beat that nobody should even be able to play. And he's fucking flipping sticks and shit. And I'm like, oh my God, I fucking love this band. Yeah, man. Fuck yeah, Carnifex. Thank you, Rob.
Yeah.
I forgot that. Fuck yeah.
It's a good album. If you haven't heard it, you should check it out.
Yeah, for sure, man. God, that's why I love this fucking segment. I love it.
I almost went with Shadow of Intent because I'm like really loving Shadow of Intent right now, and they're kind of new and like hot and trending in the deathcore scene. But like, that album Slow Death by Carnifex for the last like 2 years. Whenever I'm like, I just want to put on something and just like listen to a whole album straight way through, I've been putting that album on. It's just so good.
Yeah, we all have those go-tos, man. No, that's killer. I'll have to throw that on Monday when I'm at work and don't want to be there.
Check it out. Have you met Kerry? Have you met Kerry King before?
No.
You're wearing a Slayer hat.
No, I haven't, man. That's so this is I literally bought this Slayer hat. I think it was 2 years ago, I guess, at their final tour. In Charlotte, and dude, I literally like I coughed up like $300 for tickets to be like 10 rows back, dead center stage, and yeah, it was literally one of the it was my favorite show I've seen in my entire life.
Kevin is really good friends with Kerry King, and Kerry King breeds carpet pythons and stuff.
Yeah, I know that. I know that. It's my goal to somehow weasel my way into meeting him.
Well,
and just get a picture.
If they tour again, like call up Kevin and see if you can, because he gets backstage passes every time. So we hung out with Kerry King after the show, and like a bunch of the people out back are all like talking about the show, and like they're like all somber and stuff. And then Kerry comes over to Kevin, and he's like, "Check out this carpet python I just hatched out." And he like,
see, I love that shit.
So, pythons and shit. It was so great.
Like my favorite story about Kerry King is from Brian Cusco. I think it was Cusco. He was talking about how he was at a show, and it was the first time he met him. This was like early on for Cusco. Like Brian wasn't Brian yet. You know, he was doing some stuff on YouTube, and he was getting a little bit of traction, but he wasn't like where he's at now. And he said something along the lines of how like Kerry, they were at I think it was at like the Anaheim show, or I can't remember. But he was like, yeah, he's like, of course everybody's trying to talk to Kerry about music. And he was like, I saw Kerry, like there was like a Tesla like booth or something there, like a display or whatever, because these convention centers a lot of times have stuff like that. And he's like, I started talking to Kerry about like the car, and he's like, I could see it in Kerry's eyes where he was so glazed over of talking about reptiles and music, like he just was happy to have somebody ask him about something other than fucking snakes and fucking music. And I guess apparently he's a pretty big car guy too. So I guess Cusco ended up talking for like 20-30 minutes, just like one-on-one. And he's just like, it was just like one of the craziest moments of my life, blah blah blah, like this, that, and the other thing. But yeah, man, it is a definite like goal, whatever you want to call it. It's like a selfish goal that I have through this podcast and through just like everything else that I do with my social media stuff. To like, I'm like, I know enough people that know people that know Kerry for me to totally be able to meet him.
Hey man, I'm living proof that know people because like
that's it.
My whole way that I've met Rob and fucking everybody, like I reached out and started hanging out with Brian Cusco, and because of Brian Cusco, like I've traveled all over the place, and like I probably wouldn't be having this conversation with you and Rob right now.
I was literally just gonna say is that it's funny.
We're gonna meet. We're gonna have Kerry King on this podcast.
I hope so, man. He hasn't done Brian Barczyk's podcast yet. He ain't doing ours yet, but we'll.
I don't know, man. Don't never say never.
No. Not supposed to say. I don't want to put it out in the universe. It's not going to happen because it can definitely happen.
We're manifesting that shit right now.
But he was at Tinley 2 years ago. I'm just saying.
Yeah, my man.
Yeah, I missed it. Psychotic Exotics Booth was there, but I missed Kerry.
Yeah, my manifest for that would be to have him on and talk reptiles for like 3 minutes, and then literally talk about anything except for reptiles and music for any amount of time after that he wants to do that. I'm not kidding, because again, like that's why I like to talk about the business stuff, which it is relevant to what we do here. But dude, that's why I love this shit, because I'm like, anybody's gonna get these guests on. Like anybody can get you on, Rob, and ask you about like, oh, what do you do every day at Nerd, and like what's Nerd got going on, and what's the latest and greatest thing. But I'm like, dude, tell me the fuck about like why you're into this shit, and like what do you think is fucking cool today, and what do you think is gonna be cool next week, and you know what I'm saying? And like, oh, like what was your thought process for like transitioning from being just a keeper to a business and that kind of shit. I want to talk about relevant shit that actually matters to everybody that listens to this stuff, and not just random shit.
That morph, this morph,
exactly. This morph, this fucking morph, and the same shit you're going to hear on every fucking podcast. And that's not to talk shit about anybody. It's just the facts. We want this shit to be fucking for us, dude. Like I want all of us. Like, I want even our guests to walk away having been like, that was a fun ass conversation. That was like not the questions that I thought they were going to ask me about. That's the way. That's my 100% my goal.
Zach, give me your band of the week.
My band of the fucking week. Let's go with. I don't remember if I've done them before. I'm going to go with Ghost. I think I've mentioned them a few times. Like, or did I? Who did I say last week? I don't even remember.
I don't remember.
It wasn't Ghost. I'm going to go with Ghost this week. I think I gave Ghost an honorable mention last week. I'm going with Ghost full on this week. So Ghost is my fucking go-to band. I actually saw Ghost live. They were touring with fucking Iron Maiden. You know, no big deal. Nobody.
Who are those guys?
Yeah, who are those guys? But no, man, their live show was just phenomenal. And I saw them at the same venue that I saw this Slayer show. So this Slayer show was fucking Slayer, Lamb of God, Testament, Behemoth, and that might have been it. I think that was
Lamb of God with Chris Adler or without Chris Adler?
With Chris Adler.
Hell yeah.
It was it was good.
I saw Lamb of God 4 times.
I believe he was there.
Chris Adler, and once
I never thought about it. I'm 99.9%
on the other drummer, but it wasn't Chris Adler. So.
Yeah, Chris Adler's just a super talented guy. And you know when Lamb of God started, Chris Adler was not the fucking drummer. He was like their guitar player or some shit like that. It was fucking crazy. He's like, yeah, I had dabbled in drums, but like I had never really like been committed to it.
And then he's
I'm like,
a fucking freak.
Yeah, but now you're like one of the world's greatest fucking drummers, and you played drums for fucking Megadeth. Like, what the fuck?
So my band of the week this week is what's gotten me through these long ass night shifts, and I've been killing the album Dear Desolation from Thou Art Is Murder. And,
yes,
like I had forgotten about that album, and dude, I just been like that shit's been just pushing me through these night shifts, just fucking, And I love Thou Art Is Murder, man. Like, that's
hell yeah,
a good band. If nobody's
CJ's a beast.
Oh
it's been a minute since I listened to them, dude. But holy, like as soon as you said, I was like, "Fuck!" I'm sure it was on my face, but yeah.
All right, Rob. So
Holy War.
Yeah, Holy War's a great album too. Yeah. Our second segment that we do is movies or TV shows. Same thing. Old shit, new shit, something you want to see. What are we watching?
Black Mirror.
Okay.
I like it.
I keep hearing about it. I haven't watched it yet. I'm a super paranoid person, so I feel like
don't. If you're paranoid, don't watch it.
Yeah, that's where I have it, man. I'm telling y'all. I feel like if I watch that shit, it's gonna set me off the fucking rails. I won't be able to function day to day.
Pretty much. I love that sort of stuff, though. It's so dark. I love anything that's dark like that.
Yeah, I do too. But some stuff, man, pushed me too far. I struggle to function after watching certain things. So.
There's an episode of Black Mirror that I always tend to go back to, and I know you'll know it. So they're on these treadmills or these stationary bikes, and
the rating one.
Yeah, man, and like they have to pedal these bikes, and like it generates points, and yeah, dude, yeah, and so like the whole thing is they live in these little pods, and like. It's almost like it's in a simulation or something, and their whole room is like their computer screen, and they swipe from like app to app, and they spend their points that they pedal on to buy shit and get different apps. But they're all trying to get on this show, and it's like American Idol, you know, it's like this big show, and like the dude saves up all these points, just pedals fucking for a month straight, and he gets all these points and gives them away. And then just check it out. Black Mirror's pretty fucking dope.
That's one of the less dark episodes. I mean, it's dark, but it's not. It's really interesting in the social media aspect of things.
Yeah, that one just has a lot of social commentary to it.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, the ones that I love are like the one that's like the entire history of you, the one with the like memory implant thing. Oh, that one. Man. That one's dark.
Or the one where the chick's husband dies. And like,
yes, that's my other favorite one.
That one's pretty crazy.
Dark.
Like the app starts talking to her, and then she orders like the
guy to come in, and it's like a replacement. Yeah, oof.
That's pretty hardcore shit.
Yeah,
I can't do it. I'm way too crazy naturally. I can't deal with that. It's gonna start causing me to question reality.
What you got?
I question enough as is. So dude, I'm gonna go with so there's this movie. I'm a big John Cusack fan. He does like a lot of weird, like fringe, kind of almost B grade stuff. And and he did this one movie with this other guy who does a lot of fringe B grade stuff, Mr. Nicolas Cage himself. Where I gotta show you. He does both. Nicolas Cage is my guilty pleasure, man. Like I both hate a lot of dumb shit that he does, but I love a lot of his stuff. I don't know why. But this is an older movie by him. It's called The Frozen Ground. It's just what popped in my head. I watched it a few weeks ago. I've watched it numerous times, and it's always super interesting. It's kind of like a serial killer documentary, or not documentary, but like a serial killer kind of thriller type movie where, it's just this guy trying to, chase this guy and prove that he killed these people. But it's just a good fucking movie. John Cusack plays a really good, like, serial killer, like almost creepy. So like creepily. So like he shouldn't be that good at playing like this fucking horrible person that does these horrible things to these people, but he really does. And then you sprinkle a little Nicolas Cage in there, and it's just, again, I think you guys can do the math. But no, it's honestly, it's a good fucking movie, and it's super entertaining. So I'm gonna go with that for this week, because like I said, when you asked me, I do this a lot of times just on the fly, and I was like, that's where my head went. So I'm sticking with it.
So mine this week's actually been thought out, but before I show you,
what are you trying to say?
I got to show you that I never think them out, and if I do, like fucking last week, Brandon stole mine. Like I
forgot about that.
Said it before me,
yeah.
But my nephew got me this for Christmas, so it's a pillow, right?
Dude, these are so great.
It's a Nick Cage pillow.
Oh, I love it so much. It's too fucking good.
All right, so Zach, I told you the other day that I wanted you to watch this. We had a long conversation. So me being from Arkansas, when I was a kid, there was the West Memphis 3 murders. And if you guys have never heard about the West Memphis 3 case, HBO has 3 documentaries: Paradise Lost, Paradise Lost 2, and Paradise Lost 3. Check them out. It's pretty insane. 3 kids got murdered, and they blamed it on Satanists. And it was these like 18-year-old boys got sent to prison for 18 years. Basically, they got railroaded because they listened to metal and were into like Wicca and shit like that. And there was no physical evidence, nothing.
And if you want a really quick recap of the case, you can literally, there's a song by Zao. ZAO is the band, which, fuck, they could easily be my band of the week, any week, like any given week. But they have a song called Free the Three that they literally just like give a quick rundown of the way that the case was handled, like police literally smoking cigarettes on the scene of the crime, dropping cigarette butts on the scene of the crime.
Wow.
Yeah.
No, man, it's so fucking deep.
It's
like
fucking crazy.
And it's horrible. Like it's scary. Like it really is. So Paradise Lost 1, 2, and 3.
Panic, man. Satanic Panic.
Check that shit out. Anybody that was a little bit weird and a little bit different and listened to metal music and wasn't the norm, like it'll definitely hit home with you.
Yeah.
But all right, Rob. So we're gonna have you wrap it up, and our last thing is the reptile of the week. So you just any reptile that you want to shout out, give knowledge to, while you educate us on the reptile of the week. We're gonna get our final questions for you in the comments, and we'll wrap this thing up, man.
I gotta think about this. This could be a good one. I'm so tempted to shout out Jonna Dragna from Sim Containers because he just produced some Varanus Nuchalis, some white-headed monitors, and those things have got me so geeked out. I'm like, they're just so interesting. And then the other one would be like Varanus spinulosa, the Solomon Island spiny neck monitors. We got some big ones in at Nerd, and those things have got me geeked out. I worked with them before at Nerd, and then we sold them, and I was like kicking myself for not buying them because I'm in love with them. But they're this incredible monitor. They look like a Graze monitor, which is the only monitor that's been known to eat fruit. So they have this very similar looking body to them. They've got these big yellow ocelli down their back. Their eyes are like black, like super dark colored. It's hard to even see the pupils in their eyes because their eyes are so dark colored. They're a medium-sized monitor, and they've got these like intense sharp claws, and then they've got these bands down their back, like gray bands down the back, and big yellow ocelli on them. I love Varanus spinulosa, the Solomon Island spiny monitors. I need one of those in my life in the worst kind of way. Oh my goodness, they are just
check them out.
So cool looking.
Y'all just got some at Nerd?
We just got some. I posted on my Instagram story, and I think I posted a picture of one sitting on my arm recently on my Instagram, not on the Nerd Instagram.
I was gonna say I need you to send me some pictures, man. Like,
I'll send you some pictures. I have some. I literally took pictures of them because the other day when I was holding them, I was geeking out and losing my mind. So I was just like snapping pictures of it all, like 100 of them, just staring at them because they're so cool. They're just such an interesting monitor species. So it's between those two. I don't know. Shout out to Sim Containers, Jonna Dragna in New York. He's breeding some Nuchalis, which are like incredibly rare. Very interesting. I think it's the first time they've been produced in the United States. Was his first clutch. He just hatched out another clutch of them, and John is an amazing guy. That and then the spinulosa. I love those monitors. They're so cool.
Man, I'm cool. Stoked now to see the pictures you're gonna send me.
They're pretty. They're really pretty.
Zach, you got any last thoughts before I close this out?
Man, no. I mean, again, I said it early on. I love everything that Rob has been doing for so many years in terms of just the education stuff. I think that's my biggest takeaway or just in general, like that. My biggest thought when I think of Rob is the stuff that he's been doing for so many years. And so again, I love that aspect. I think that's super important in the sense that like feel like we're in a weird place as a hobby, especially where people think that they have to have a YouTube channel, or they have to have an Instagram, or they have to have a TikTok to have an impact, right? And again, I spoke about it early on, and again, that's why I want to close with this, is that literally any and all of us can have an impact day to day by just literally shouting it from the mountaintops, this stuff that we like and love. Again, I was a bartender, for years and years, and I met with hundreds of people every day that had no idea that I was into snakes. Occasionally it would come up, like certain customers or whatever, but I had hundreds of opportunities, to maybe work it into conversation, right? And maybe get a chance to educate some people. And that's just random interactions throughout the day. So literally you don't even have to be doing reptile presentations to affect this hobby and this world that we live in. Literally any and all of us, if we will just be more open about the stuff that we love when we're at home, whether that's day to day at work or whatever, I would encourage anybody listening to this, become that reptile person. Become that person that's oh, you're the snake guy at work, or you're the snake girl at work. Lean into that. I that's my kind of go-to phrase. Lean into what we are doing here. Lean into what all of us are doing. If anybody needs encouragement, if you've caught shit for being a certain way or whatever, this is the community. We love you. We will fucking embrace you. You're not alone. But again, just my point, I think, again, what I love Rob for and have always loved Rob for is just his impact on the community, and the fact that I know that he's going to have a continued impact on the community no matter where he's at, no matter how many years go on. That's going to continue to be a thing, and that's our goal with this podcast, with this Connected by Creatures, because that is what connects us all. And I just hope that we can continue to grow this net of people that are connected by creatures. I hope we can continue to cast it wide and just keep growing it. So yeah, that's all I got, man. I don't know. I don't mean to get sappy this week, but that's where my head's at.
That's definitely just creeping it real.
Any final thoughts, Rob?
What's up?
Anything where people can find you and get in contact with you?
If you want to find out more of the stuff that I'm doing, see a picture of that spiny neck monitor, check out my Instagram. It's at Rob is Creeping It Real. I do have a YouTube channel. I only post on there when I find something interesting that I want to share with people. So it's not hey, check out my thing that I'm doing every week. It's I think I posted 2 months ago or a month and a half ago or something. I am going to be in the process of making a scrub handling video because there's no scrub handling videos on YouTube really. And I've had a lot of people that have asked me how I go about socializing my scrub pythons, and that's something that I find interesting. So that is going to be in the process for the next 2 weeks. I'm going to try recording and filming for some scrub stuff. But Instagram is probably the best place to find me. Don't add me on Facebook. I'm over 4,000 friends on Facebook now, and
that's a lot to keep up with.
I try and keep my Facebook kind of community based. I post questions of the day, so I post stuff that people can share. The last one I posted was about depression and suicide, and what was the thing.
I saw that, man, and I love that, by the way.
Yeah, and it allows people to share in this space where they might not feel like they have got someone who they can talk to about those sort of things. And so I try and have that on my Facebook, and nothing against anyone who's wants to be part of the group or whatever, but I don't know. I'm really picky about who I add on my Facebook now.
In other words, you're trying to keep it personal, man. You're trying to keep it more personal. You're trying to keep it to a point where you can actually really keep up with these people, really have interactions. It's hard. Yeah.
Check me out on Instagram. I share a bunch of memes on my story. I post cool reptiles in my feed. Check me out on there. I got Snapchat. I don't really use it. I just made a TikTok, but blah, blah, blah. Who cares?
I care. It's important. I will tell you right now, fucking lean into that shit, Rob. I'm telling you, dude.
I am.
Please fucking listen to me. I text Brian Cusco literally last night or the night before, I can't remember, to let him know that his Whiskey Wimps channel needs a fucking TikTok. If I don't hear from him that he has it done in the next couple days, I'm going to be fucking mad. Trust me, Rob, I'm telling you. In terms of the education shit, dude, if that's what you're passionate about, trust me. Fucking get on TikTok, dude. Your personality and the way you can present things, you will murder it. Think of it, because you do it all day anyways. You do these 15, 20-second clips of education about animals. Dude, you could sit down and do 100 of them and then release them like one day at a time, like one a day for the next couple of months. It would be easy for you.
Yeah,
Fucking
I already started
do it.
on there. It's Rob is Creeping It Real, same thing. So
Yes, fucking lean into it, man. I'm gonna fucking message Donnie and tell him he's got to make you do it. So
I'm on TikTok. I'm already on. I already posted some stuff on
like,
there.
no. I'm gonna be like, Donnie, listen. Rob's got to bump his fucking posts up like 3-4 a day. Just get it done.
Rob, man. Again,
Seriously,
bro, thank you so much for doing this. Every time I've ever been around you, every time I've ever talked to you, it's always a great time. I love how passionate and open you are about other people. One of my favorite things about you, man, that I don't know if people see it or know it, but you're an ambassador of the people, man. Like you want no hatred, no type of stereotype bullshit like that, and you're vocal about it, and I love you for that. As far as your everything with reptiles, man, you're great at education. You're great at everything. You're an awesome guy, man. And I'm not just trying to toot your horn. Like, I mean that. And that's why it meant a lot for you to be here tonight.
I appreciate that.
So, for everyone that sees this, thank you guys for stopping in and supporting us. Please hit the subscribe button. We appreciate everybody. We appreciate everybody that watches, but our analytics, 50% of our views are from non-subscribers. So if you guys hit that subscription, it means everything to me and Zach. We love all of you guys. Next week, it'll be just me and Zach. We're going to do a recap of all the guests that we've had. I'm going to be doing Wrapped Around Reptiles merch giveaway. And everybody just come in, hang out. We're gonna go over the history of Connected by Creatures, give you a little update on what we have going on, and there's some big shit coming in the future for Zach and I, and let all you guys know what's going on then. So see you next Friday, and much love to everyone who feels connected by creatures. Later,
Well,
guys.
Love you guys. Later.